all know how important that is. Unfortunately, nitrogen is really hard to test for because it changes form from organic to inorganic really easily, and it's lost through leaching really fast. It gets taken up by the plants, and so the University of Massachusetts actually doesn't even test for nitrogen because they're assuming that you don't have any in your soil. I know I have nitrogen in my soil because I have a lot of organic matter and a lot of manure in my soil, and that's a really good source of organic nitrogen. I like to use goat the best, but I've also used horse and cow and chicken. No, I get it from people that have animals. Yeah. No, it's a great question. Before fertilizers were invented, everything, all farmers kept both animals and grew crops together because they could use the waste product from the animals for their gardens, and that made sense. And now that they've, in modern times, we've completely separated the animals and put them on huge feedlots, and the farms, just grow crops, and there's no integration, and except for when you see those big manure spreaders that spray the manure slurry.
Which one works the best that you like?
Which manure works the best? I really like goat manure because it's not hot, meaning that it's not as nitrogen rich, so it doesn't burn your plants. So if you put too much nitrogen all at once onto your plants, then it can burn them.
I have a friend with goats, and so I put a bunch of goat manure on the raised beds at the school, but I did it like in October because I was worried about like contamination. Like, does it even do anything if you put it on in the winter and let it sit for the spring? Or?
Sure. Yeah. It will just start to break down, and that's fine. It will still go into the soil. You don't.
Would it be dangerous to put it on your on your food like in July or August?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily add it to a garden that was already growing. What I do a lot is I do like a sheet mulch garden where I make a bed that's completely made out of manure and whatnot, and then I'll plant into that. But if you're adding manure on top of your plants, then there's more chances that the manure will touch the leaves and that there will be some contamination to it. But if you're actually, like, the roots don't get contaminated, it's the leaves. That's the part that you're eating. So you can plant stuff into it. That makes sense.
So say that, could you explain that sheet thing that you just said you did?
Yeah, okay, so
is that going to be later? Or you can come back to it?
Well, I was going to talk about it later, but that's fine. I
Okay,
can talk about it now.
now.
Okay, so sheet mulching, I feel like I'm putting everything off till later, so we'll just start talking about things. Okay, so the sheet mulching is also called lasagna gardening or composting in place. And it's a really, really great way. I highly recommend it, especially if you're developing new garden beds or if you have a really difficult soil. So what you do is, basically if you're starting with lawn, you want to put cardboard on top of your lawn to smother the grass out. And then you put layers of organic material on top of it, just the same way that you would build a compost pile. So I like to use manure mixed with bedding
On top of the cardboard?
On top of the cardboard. And then, you can use grass clippings and leaves and anything that you would put in a compost pile, kitchen scraps, any of that, and layer it up, and then till it's about 1.5 feet tall or taller, if you can get it taller. And then you put just a layer of mulch on top, so like straw and leaves, just to keep everything moist. You have to have a lot of water in there, and then you can plant right into it basically. And as it breaks down, it creates beautiful organic soil.
What did you call it?
Sheet mulching. It's also called lasagna gardening or composting in place. And I have a workshop where we actually build a bed. So it's, when you talk about it, it's like, this isn't ever going to work. And my husband, actually, when I did my first sheet mulch bed, he was like, it's not going to work. It's not going to do it. And I wish I had a video of him walking out into the garden the next spring, and he took up a handful of soil, and he was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Because there wasn't any traces of the manure or anything left. It was just beautiful black soil.
And could you put that in a raised bed?
Mm-hmm.
So you built that in the fall and let it sit all winter, or
No, actually, I built all of mine in the spring.
spring?
Yeah.
You plant them, that's
Yeah,
what
you
do?
can. Yep, what you do is you just make a hole into the organic material, and you put a handful of soil in there, and then you plant your seedling or your seed right into that soil. And then by the time the roots get big enough, they'll go right into the organic material, no matter what it is or how broken down it is.
And how small should the organic material be? Should you chop that up or just?
For the most part, it's fine. The only thing I would caution against using is like wood chips, because wood chips are very high in carbon, and so they bind all of your nitrogen, and as they break down, and so they kind of create a nitrogen-starved environment. But you can use actually big logs, and when you use big logs as your base for your garden, then that's called a hugelkultur. It's a German word. So you can build really cool raised beds using old rotten logs. And because they're so little surface area to big logs, they break down really slowly and slowly release those nutrients.
Where's that going
It would go in the bottom.
on the bottom?
Yeah.
Right over the carpet.
Yeah. Yeah. Or a lot of times what they'll do is they'll kind of dig a pit and lay the logs in the pit, and then put the dirt over the logs.
And rotten logs?
Rotten logs works the best. Yeah. Because if you've ever gone for a walk in the forest, you've seen a log that's fallen over, and there's always things sprouting out of that old rotten log, and that's basically what you're simulating.
So I'm glad you said that, because that's one thing I want to learn tonight. I've got an area where I want to build 3 big raised beds, and I don't really want to have a truck deliver soil and then carry it all the way back there.
Yeah.
But what is the, I can get a whole bunch of organic material for free, but what sort of odors would be involved in that?
Once you cover it up, so what I usually do is, especially if I'm using manure, I'll put just a thin layer of soil over the manure, and once you do that, there's no more odor. When you have it in a big pile in your driveway, yeah, you can drive your neighbors crazy a little bit, but you just get them to come help you, and then it goes faster. And I've actually called up a guy on Craigslist who takes horse manure out of the city and goes and dumps it in Seward or the valley. And he was like, yeah, I'll come dump a whole truckload of horse manure in your driveway. So you can do that. Otherwise, you can rent a trailer and drive out to Chugiak or the valley and find a farmer that is, especially if they have a bobcat or something, to load you up. It's pretty easy.
Like, and I have some of them.
Yeah, I know. A lot of farmers are like, great, take it, take it. Okay. So back to our soil test. Nutrients. Like I said, nitrogen, some soil tests test for nitrogen, others don't. The most important thing to know is that your plants always need nitrogen. And it is a constant thing that is good to think about. Besides my strategy of using lots of manure in my gardens, sometimes I like to use the free nitrogen that we